here we go again. I don't know what we're at, part 4 or 5, I'm not sure. So I figured we'd go over some stuff. I finally got the transmission in. I'm not done yet doing everything. As you can see, the stuff still tore apart. I still got to install the starter, finish stuff, but I want to point out some things that were a pain in the ass on working on this thing. So first of all, the hydraulic system. I bench bled the slave cylinder and the transmission, and then did what I could with the line, but at the end of the day, even though I capped it and stuff like that, when you take everything apart and then you're trying to reconnect it, you still end up with air, so it's not the easiest thing to get rid of. And then the next thing is that when I got the transmission in, it wasn't super hard to stab it, obviously use a transmission jack and stuff, which it's sitting over there. It's not super hard to stab the transmission, but man, oh man, did I have a lot of other problems. So I still haven't bolted the drive shaft in yet, but it's in. It was this torque stabilizer bar, or whatever you want to call it. So this is flipped upside down. I've done this before. Again, this is just me. You do whatever you want with your car. But I had to take this off the rear end. If you guys remember in my past video, I had it sort of sitting to the side. The problem is that you could leave it bolted and you do just fine. You just have to remember that when you get ready to stab this transmission, to lift this bar up, and it won't stay, so you have to have a second pair of hands. But if you can remember, before stabbing this transmission in, to get this bar pushed up and keep it there, right up to the side right here and out of the way, then you can possibly, wrestle the bar over the side of the transmission, and then, it'll slide in and around that, and you can stab the transmission. So if I was able to do it over again, if I would have remembered, I would have done that. I did not do that. So I had a hell of a time with the transmission already stabbed in the engine, because this thing does not lean down a lot on the engine mounts. There's not a lot of movement. So the bottom of the transmission will only hang maybe, honestly, probably 3 inches lower than what it does right now. So this is still, the whole side's still up. There's this, as you can see, this sort of, the molding of this comes together and then it opens a little bit above that. And that's where that bar naturally sits, and it will not go in there. It's molded to sit in that. And then, there's not a lot of room to move this around. So it was a huge pain in the butt. So when I had this drop down without the torque bar, it started to slip, the axle started to slip out of the joint over here. And I'm fighting with that. And then, thankfully my wife came and helped me. But I can't stress enough that with this type of stuff, it's just sort of like, in a lot of ways, how you took it apart is going to have to be the exact way you put it back together. Because if you don't, you miss something, it's a nightmare trying to get it. Because I was not going to drop the transmission a second time just to get the stupid bar in there. So I had to figure out a way. And the way I did it, and it did work, like I said, I unbolted it from the transmission. I let the axle, which could have been stayed probably right here, maybe it would have been all right, but see, because it's bulky and pushes to the side, it takes up room. I let that axle swing down, hang downward, which opened this area up more. And then I was able to push this up back here and try to bring as far back as I can, and then try to work it up in there and try to get, you have to just work it, at different angles until you can sort of get it up in there where it gets up on the side of the transmission. And it was above the transmission, like halfway above the transmission. So I had to pry it and work the transmission side to side a little bit to try to get that thing to slip back over the side of the transmission where it's supposed to go. And then, so I got jacks here, and, working with this, and just everything is just crazy. And like I said, I've done this before, because you can't get these bolts in from the top. There's not enough room. There's probably 3 inches of space above there, and the bolt's probably 7-8 inches long. So if you don't want to have to undo that, you could try doing it the way, which I would probably recommend, because like I said, I spent a lot of time fighting this, a lot. So you're probably better off, like I said, leaving it bolted. When it's down, then you could probably pick it back up, because obviously it'll freely come back up here, right here where it would be at, and then work the transmission into that. Because before you have the transmission stabbed, you have movement, and that's what you're looking for. There's just no room in this small car to like wiggle stuff around and get it where you want it to go. It goes in an order, and that's what it wants. Next thing with this car, so when I did this transmission I stabbed, I was very gentle with it as much as I can be. I did not force the transmission to go in. You know, when you're stabbing it, you want to try to keep it as straight as possible, keep support underneath the transmission so it's not hanging on anything. And then I used drill bits. You know, I just set them inside these holes, act like pins, to sort of help guide the transmission. And then when I got it like within probably a 1/4 inch, it was like right on the dowel pins up at the top, I slowly, and I can't stress this enough, I did not force it, very slowly with the bolts back and forth, just worked the transmission the rest of the way in. So I did stab successfully. Then you got the electrical, which I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it or not, but you got to make sure you plug in the electrical and stuff like that, because it's going to be like your backup lights, your neutral safety switch and stuff like that, to let the car know that it's okay to start. So you got the electrical, you know, it plugs in here. So I get you, yep, there. And then you have that one right there that plugs in. So, and then, you know, it has this little keepers and stuff, that little like clips, things like that, that you got to pay attention to. You know, and you still got to check your O2 right there. One, you got another one above the catalytic converter, but that's all another part of video that I'll get to. I still haven't bolted in the drive shaft yet. The yoke's still sitting here. I got these 6 bolts here. I got the 3 back here that I need to work on, and I still need to tighten up these 2 nuts here. But I wanted to make a video just sort of explaining that, because that's an important thing right here that I found to be a complete pain in the butt right there, was dealing with that. But like I said, just a pain. Just take your time. Like I said, try not to get too frustrated. That's easier said than done, trust me. But take your time. Like I said, work it. And then, like I said, it didn't take as long to get the transmission in as it did getting it out. But of course, you know, that's 9 hours of doing everything. I'll probably actually have more time and putting it back together than I will actually taking it out. And that's only because I'm trying to take my time and make sure I do everything right. You know, I don't want to have to drop this again because I didn't do something right. That's the last thing I want to mess with on this car. Another thing is the hydraulic clutch does work, but it doesn't feel as good as I'd like it to. So it's probably still some air when I come out. When it sits overnight, it's got some pressure, but it's pretty weak. So I think it's still got some air in the line. I'm gonna have to try to pull that out somehow. So I'll probably buy like a vacuum pump or something from Harbor Freight and see if I can maybe pump the stuff out. At least that's what I'm hoping for. We'll see what happens and see if that actually works or not. I don't know, but I hope so. But yeah, so it does work. It just doesn't feel as good as I'd like it to feel. So we'll see how well it drives with everything I've done with welding the flywheel and all the other crap I've done on this thing that I probably shouldn't have done. But like I said, at this point, I'm just trying to get where it works really good again and drives and doesn't have any issues would be nice. So, and if it works out, then what's nice is it'll have a pretty long lifespan, so I won't have to worry about taking it apart again. And that was the goal, was to try to make it I wouldn't have to drop this thing anytime soon. So we'll see how things go. Well, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll show you the next segment when I work on it. Thank you. Have a great day.